listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
I'm just wishing I can pass this IELTS exam as soon as possible because I really need 7, in all parts.
Oh, I thought you passed it already.
No, actually, I get 6.5 with my last 6.5 for my speaking in my last attempt. So,
okay, but with your writing, what did you get?
Yeah, with my writing, I got 7.5.
Right, gotcha. You got me scared then. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Right then. Well, let's before we jump into the writing.
Okay.
And before we delve into what happened there, let's focus on the speaking. Well, actually, before we focus even on the speaking, because I'd like to help you with the speaking, and I think the students would benefit, the students listening to this would benefit also from maybe some of the advice I can give. And then we'll talk about the writing and how you managed to improve your score. But first, could you tell us where you're from and why you're studying for IELTS?
Okay, I'm from Beijing, China, and I'm studying for IELTS because I'm trying to apply for immigration to Canada and as well as Australia. So,
right, I see.
Yeah.
And how have you been preparing so far? What have you been doing?
Basically, I started preparing for my IELTS, I think, last year in April, and I've been doing it by myself. I mean, I did not go to any courses because I was quite confident with my English originally, but then I got repeated scores of 6.5 with my writing, so that's when I started to question myself and decided I need some help.
Right, I see. And when you were preparing for yourself, how did you prepare? What were you doing?
I bought all those IELTS books, the official, I have one with, it's the official Cambridge English IELTS books. I bought all of them and I did all of the practices and I would mark them by myself. So obviously I was, not marking them correctly, with my writing. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you would.
That's it.
Sorry. Yeah. So you would look at the questions and then write out answers and then review those answers afterwards.
Yes.
I see. And were you finding a lot of mistakes when you were doing that?
No. I would say I was overconfident with my English. I thought they were kind of perfect, and even though I would go back and do a error check each time after I've done the writing, but I found little spelling mistakes, and it was difficult for me to find any grammar mistakes. So I got for the first, let me organize my language. After 3 attempts with IELTS, and I was stagnating at 6.5, I decided there must be something wrong with my writing. So I really need to find someone, who is expert in this field. So that's what brings me to you. Yeah.
How did you find us? Were you listening to the podcasts or?
Actually, I was Googling the word IELTS, and the IELTSPodcast.com showed up on the first page or on the second page.
Right.
So because I was I have been a frequent user of the podcast app. So I decided, a podcast may be is a very convenient way for me to practice and to listen to, because I can listen to the podcast programs while I'm driving to work.
Gotcha. I see. Okay. And you were writing out the essays, and then you were self-checking. And by the way, don't beat yourself up for being overconfident and doing the self-checking. This is perfectly normal. And when I was writing in Spanish, I used to do a lot of self-checking. It's a very important skill to develop, and even I think the listeners will know, but when they submit an essay for correction at our service, we always encourage the students before they send us the next essay to self-check as well, because this is a valuable skill you can use in the exam. After you've finished writing your essay, you self-check it, and you can pick up some extra points just by correcting little mistakes. But the problem is when you overly confident, or you don't get sort of like a second pair of eyes to look at it, and you're just using that specific skill. You need somebody else to look, because you're not going to be able to advance. So you realize this by doing a few IELTS tests. May I ask how many IELTS tests you did?
So far, I've done 4 IELTS tests, 1 last year and 3 this year.
Wow. Okay.
And I have a upcoming one in December. Yeah, that's next weekend. Yeah, actually.
Wow, that's pretty soon. Yeah.
Yes.
I was talking about this subject with another student a week ago. And I called it the IELTS casino, and it's like a gambling. It's like a gambling addiction that some students will keep on playing and submitting to do the exam, without sort of like a big space of time between. And with that space of time, it's like the time where you can focus on your skills and improve yourself, improve your writing skills, get some feedback and all of this. But a lot of students prefer to play the casino, like the roulette, IELTS roulette, and submit straight away afterwards, like a couple of weeks afterwards, or maybe just a few days afterwards, hoping and gambling that the result's going to be different this time. But
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and
to be honest, I really hate to play this casino, because I'm running out of time and money.
Exactly. This is it. And I've done exactly the same. I think I've told the listeners about this before, but just for the new listeners, years ago, when I was trying to pass my driving test, I just kept on resubmitting, and I failed so many times. I reached double figures. And my friends found it hilarious, but I couldn't see the problem. I just thought, right, I'm going to resubmit straight away, give it another shot. Maybe this time it'll be different. And it was very similar to your situation. I was running out of time because I was going to change countries, and in the end I didn't get it. I didn't get a UK license. I had to take a Spanish one. But but it's valid anyway.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No worries. It's all. I think it's just as good anyway. Well, but anyway, back to you. So you've got your test coming up, and so now you're currently at a 7.5 with the writing. Is that right?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Good work. And before you took
Thank you.
Before you took the online course at our website, what were you at?
I was at 6.5.
Wow, so you jumped a whole band score.
Yeah, that's definitely out of my expectation, I would say. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well done to you. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. I mean, without your help, I wouldn't achieve that, because it was only, after I have done several essay corrections with your essay correction service, I realized I was actually making a lot of mistakes, or I had many misconceptions about this exam, really.
Okay, before you tell us about the misconceptions, can you tell us about some of the mistakes that you were making, and then what you learned to correct those mistakes?
Okay. First of all, I think because I have never been to any IELTS preparation courses, so I was really not aware that I have to write academically, So I was really casual with my style, and and also I was really casual with the structure of the essays. So I would even, joke about some things in those essays, and I only find out that that might be not a good way to put it in. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the jokes that you told in your essays?
No.
No, okay, that would have been good, but anyway, don't worry about it.
Specific, but I was just trying to make it sound funny, or I thought that would be interesting, but I didn't know I was expected to be academic. I didn't know that.
Wow, okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's surprising. It's surprising, like, coming from it. I mean, native English speakers make the same mistake, Weiyan. Don't worry about it. And like I've heard of of native English speakers applying for the immigration PR process in Australia because they can pick up a lot of points with the IELTS certificate under their belt, as we all know.
Yeah.
So they take it and they just think it's a walk in the park, just to stroll into the exam. Hey, I'm native English. How difficult can this be? And then they sit down and then they get in like a 6 or 7 for the writing, and they're like, hey, but it's perfect English. Fair enough. It might be perfect English and it might be a very high standard, but if it's not in this academic fashion, if it's not in this academic style, then it's not going to cut the mustard. It's not going to make the grade, so to speak.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. Yeah.
Right. So.
Yes. And I think I also have other problems with the essays. For example, my essay structure, as I've said before, I was too casual. I was not strict to the intro and part 1, part 2, and conclusion structure. Sometimes I would write a big part 2, for example, and with a very thin part 1.
I see.
So
I see.
That's. I was making a lot of mistakes.
So how did the online course help you?
I think the most helpful thing is the correction service, the essay correction service. It's only through the correction I found out that I still have many spelling errors. And there's one thing about letters, because I assume letters are quite easy, but actually they are not. I have a lot of problem with letter forms. I was not clear about what are formal letters and what are informal letters. So I would how to say, miss. I would mix those formal and informal style. So I thought it was if you wanted to start with Dear Mr. Robinson, for example, then I would start like this. I didn't know, there was a difference between formal and informal, because I have been self-taught.
Gotcha. I see. Yeah, it's quite interesting, all these different nuances that it's more of like a cultural thing than an actual language thing.
Yes, that's exactly what I've been thinking today. I think why it is important for me to listen to your tutorials and find such enlightenment is because I found, you as a native English speaker, you would, address the questions in a slightly different way than I would have in the past as a Chinese, as someone from Chinese background. So I think it's slightly different, really. So.
Absolutely. And there's a phrase that I remember, it's behind every language is an army. I think some general said this a while ago, a long time ago, but it's a clear example that, it's a clear example of three things. One is that learning the language is not sufficient to pass the exam. We also need to learn these little nuances about the culture, like you just demonstrated informal, formal letter writing. That's, I would
definitely.
say, that's a very high component, it's a very cultural aspect to the whole process. The second thing is like the exam skills, which kind of comes under this part of the culture, but it's more specific about the kind of language we're going to use and the ability to write it in 20 minutes for task 1.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then, so we've got those kind of three aspects: the language, the cultural, and the exam skills. So, and I think it just demonstrates the importance of getting help and getting feedback in order to take you to the next level. So
Yeah.
All right. Now then, could you just say have you got anything else you would like to add to, because you've mentioned once or twice that you were preparing by yourself, and to be self-taught takes a lot of motivation. How did you motivate yourself? How did you keep pushing through?
Well, for one thing, I really like to study English. I have always been the top of my class since middle school. So I really enjoy learning English. That's one thing. Another thing, which is the biggest motivation behind these 2 years preparation, is I wanted to immigrate to Canada or Australia, because I think this would benefit my family a great deal, especially I have a young little kid, So I want him to receive better education, when he grow up. So
Gotcha.
I think it's very important. So I'm very motivated.
Right. I see. Yeah, just like Vera, another student we were talking to a few weeks ago, her motivation was to get her family to Canada as well.
Yeah.
So.
And my baby boy is my biggest motivator.
Absolutely, and I totally commend you for that. That's it's awesome. So let's get you to Canada, let's get you to Australia, and I want to help you now with the speaking.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.